We'll see how long I can go before I'm interrupted. I don't have a copyright on any of this, so feel free to use it. I'll try to post photos of my papers. So I taught at a CDL school in Florida. The way they did it, they split it up into 3 sections, A, B, and C. You might get lottery, you might get all 3, 2, or just 1 if you were lucky. So I'm just going to go over a bunch of parts. So A was the overall gross view of your overall rig, and you view it and then you check the engine. B was from the driver's door all the way down the driver's side, all the way to the rear trailer, including tires. And you can ask, if you talk about the tires on one side, ask your instructor whether he wants you to repeat everything on the other side with the tires. Then there's coupling. In Florida, they did not have to do the coupling, the actual coupling. C is all about your trailer, maybe from a rear view, and then you'll walk from the rear of the trailer back up to the passenger side, back up to the engine, and then you're finished. Then there's lights, everything lights, and then everything in cab. I say go left to right, top to bottom. So when you're in your dashboard, just see what there is from left to right and top to bottom. It keeps it simple. DVIR is your driver's vehicle inspection report. Always mention to your instructor. Just talk out loud. They want to hear you. They don't deduct things. They actually add points when you mention it. So just tell them if there was anything wrong with my truck, I would make out a DVIR for my boss. PTI, pre-trip inspection, and I made something up called PMS, properly mounted and secured. Everything on your truck is going to be PMS, properly mounted and secured, okay? You don't have to remember thousands of things, okay? Very easy. Fabric doesn't crack, okay, and glass doesn't rip. So when you're talking about glass, either you say chip or crack or break. When you're talking about fabric, it either tears or frays or rips. When you're talking about anything metal, it may wear or bend. So just use common sense and think about what you're speaking about, and bring up 3 things about everything you're looking at. If you don't say it, it wasn't done. So everything you look at, speak out loud. Tell the instructor what you're thinking. He can't read your mind. So when you're talking about rims of the tire, or the frame of your truck that's metal, talk about any illegal welds or holes. You don't want that. When you're talking about oil, actually dip the dipstick, or pretend to dip the dipstick. And your power steering, also your level. Okay, so wipe your rag, or pretend you're wiping your rag, and tell him that you're dipping it and wiping it off and then dipping it back in, and then going to get your reading. So reinsert it, get your reading, and tell him that if it was low, you would fill it and make it full. He has to hear you think. Your belt, check the gears. And I haven't read this in a while. So check your gears, talk about any fray, wear, and no more than 3/4 slack on anything. Hoses, talk about your clamps, your fittings. You don't want to see any leaks, no bubbles. There's something else down here, ABC, okay? A for abrasion, B for bulges, C for cuts, or BBC, anything bent, broken, or cracked. And then you got cable, CABL, cuts, abrasions, bulges, leaks. So if you just remember CABL, cable, ABCs, or your BBC, you'll always talk about, or you'll always know what to talk about. So your lines, you don't want any crimping. Let's see, air versus fluid. Ooh, what does that say? You don't want any abrasions, bubbles, or cuts, okay? In your air lines or any fluid lines. You don't want to see any fluid leaking. You don't want to hear any air hissing. No crimping in any lines, okay? Your grease fittings, you want to check your 5th wheels. I don't know what that would be, 5th wheel slack. You don't want any slack around the kingpin. You don't want to see any stains. No fluid on your stairs because that's a slip hazard. You don't want to see any oil leaks or stains on the ground. You don't want to see any stains on your brakes. No leaks around there. You don't want to see grease anywhere where it's not supposed to be. Airbags and lines, okay? You don't want to see anything deflating, anything hissing. You don't want to see anything shiny silver. because anything you see shiny and silver on an old truck, it means that there's new wear and tear. So you don't want to see any rusty trails. That's rust that's dripping down. That means that it's recently had fluid on it and it's gotten rusty. Any mirrors and glass, you want to say that it's clean and has no cracks. Clean because you don't want anything to impede your vision. Anything on your lights or reflectors, you don't want to see any moisture in any light fixture. And talk about your ambers and your reds, okay? Anything in the rear of the vehicle is going to be red. Anything on the side, top is probably going to be amber, and your lowers, you might have reflectors that are red. Tires, talk about tread, uneven wear. You don't want to see any uneven wear. You want it to all be even. Otherwise, you have alignment problems. You don't want to see any dry rot. And talk about the PSI, pounds per square inch. In Florida, I think it's 110 because it's hotter. They have a different tolerance. So if you're in a different state, modify what I'm saying to fit what you need. Make cliff notes for yourself. Any belts or fabric, seat belt. Who cares about the seats really, but seat belt, what else? You don't want any fray, you don't want cuts, you don't want tears. Everything PMS, properly mounted and secured. My windows, my mirrors, everything, just say PMS, ABC, BBC, or cable, okay? You don't want everything too rusty either, okay? So in Florida, our tires, we want PSI to be 100 to 105. If it got hotter, you check the tires, it's going to be a little higher. Also, friction on the road is going to make it higher. When you're in the colder states, that number, when you go to check it, even if you put 100 in and you go from Florida, drive up to Connecticut, you might see, I don't know, 90, 95. So just remember that if you start off in the colder and you have 100 pounds, by the time you get into the hot of Florida, it's going to be higher and you don't want a blowout. So always check your air air pressure. 1 or 2 valve stems. Oh, okay, so there's an outer valve stem, and then you'll see a second valve stem for the inner tire. So make sure you point out that you can see both. You want to talk about the sidewalls. You want nothing bulging. Just remember the ABCs, BBC, cuts and abrasions, right? So talk about your tread, depth. Actually pretend that you have a gauge. Tell them that you would be checking with a gauge. In Florida, the fronts have to be 4 30-seconds, and the rears can be 2 30-seconds. So you want more tread on the fronts because you don't want to not be able to steer, okay? On the fronts, you're never allowed recaps, right? Your front, you're going to talk about your hub seal in the center. They are serviceable. And you'll talk about all your bolts. All your bolts are there and they're intact and you don't see any rust or no new shiny areas where the bolts have backed off. In the rear, you're going to talk about an axle seal. These are not serviceable. And talk about the bolts again. Your bud wheels are your double wheels in the back. You want to see even spacing. You don't want to see any rocks, soda cans stuck in between there, no bulges. Actually, stick your neck under there and act like you're looking. Lug nuts, make sure, you don't see any brand new wear of silver, no rust tears. Let's see, goes from tire to tire, front tire to rear tire. Section B in Florida goes from the driver's door to the rear. C, you're doing the trailer. And then lights, coupling, in cab, and railroad tracks you may or may not have. Just ask your inspector or your person that's giving you the test. All right, let's talk about automatic failures. Failure to put your seatbelt on. Failure to watch your off track. If your tires go up on a curb or anything, the tester can only think that you would have run over a person or a child or an animal or did damage, okay? So he may say, hey, get out of the seat. I'm driving back, and you automatically failed. If you forget to stop, or if you stop, or change lanes on a railroad track, you have to keep going, keep the same gear, and don't be switching gears across a railroad track. And make sure that you look all the way to the left and all the way to the right, far as you can see, no cars coming. Because once you start going, you want to be able to go right across the railroad tracks. And, you know, if the cars make a big pile up, then he's going to say that that was not safe. Signs and signals, you have to pay attention to them all. Red arrows, red arrows. Don't take a left or a right if it's a red arrow or it says do not turn. Any avoidable accident, automatic failure. If you change gears or change lanes in an intersection, automatic failure. Yield to all cars, all pedestrians, otherwise automatic failure. If the examiner has to take over, you're done. Any dangerous action that he deems dangerous. Accumulation of points. So you know you have your pull-ups and your get-outs during your static test, but when you're on over the road, you get bad points. You get points added for doing things bad, and I think they add points for when you mention things good on your pre-trip. So I think that's how it goes. I was not really supposed to be privy, although I do have a paper. Not supposed to be privy to the actual DOT test. He would have lost his job. Speed, don't go 3 miles an hour. More, let's see. You have a tolerance of 1 to 5 miles. Once you get to that 6 mile per hour over, automatic failure. So keep it simple, stupid. Don't try to switch a million gears. Start off in third if you can do that nicely with the clutch. Maybe go to fourth or fifth. Now you're doing 35, 40 miles an hour, fast enough for the test. KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Don't be a hero. Keep it slow. Just pass your test, man. This is just all about passing your test. You're going to learn how to shift when you get a job. I think you're allowed to take the last page with you on your, the manual that they give to you in Florida. I don't know in any other states. If you stall a manual shift, no bueno. So make sure that you always dump that clutch and hope that you can give it a little fuel and catch yourself back up so you don't stall out. If you're unable to catch gears, remember 5th gear is your most, forgivable gear. But if you can't make it and you're grinding a pound of coffee there, you're going to fail. So, like I said, only do 2 shifts and be good. In a pre-trip, if you forget your seatbelt or you forget to mention that you're doing a 3-point, even if you do it, if you don't mention it, that you're 3 points in and out, you got 2 hands and at least 1 foot, right? Or 2 feet, maybe a hand, but 3-point access. All right, these are just some things. CDL means commercial driver's license, CMV, commercial motor vehicle, PM, preventative maintenance, PMS, properly mounted and secured, ABC, abrasions, cuts, and bulges, BBC, bent, broken, cracked, cable, cuts, abrasions, bulge, and leaking. And then this is on your brake test, G, key, LAB. G, add the word key, LAB. So G for your governor. Turn the key off so that the engine turns off, but that your dashboard or your dials are still working, and then do your leak test, alarms, and then your buttons, yellow and red, pop out, okay? ABS, anti-lock braking system, DVIR, driver's vehicle inspection report. Any fluids, you're going to tell them what the minimum, the maximum should be, and that you filled it and it's full. CMC, commercial motor carrier, that's your boss. GVW, gross vehicle weight. Let's see. Okay, so I've got it down, which I'll explain over here. So if you make a little sticky note and you remember these numbers, 343122 G key LAB. So 343122. What does this all mean? All right. So there's 3 point. So 3-point entry and a safe start. Tell your inspector what the parameters are that you expect to see as far as air pressure, everything, what you're actually seeing, and then you tell them whether it passed or failed. Tell them what it should be, what it actually is while you're doing it, and if it passed or failed. So remember, 3-point and safe start. Safe start is dumping the clutch, putting your foot on the clutch, and then making sure with your right hand that your gear is in neutral. So 3-point safe start. Then you got 4 for me. Everything is adjusted for you. So 4 things adjusted for me. Group everything. It's easier to remember, right? Steering, your seat belt, and your mirrors. And then 3. You got 3 things for safety, right? And remember 522. These are 911, just meaning emergency, right? So the 3 safety things are fire extinguisher. There are 5 things to say about it, right? It's secured. It's not expired. It has the right amount of pressure in there. It's accessible. Just think of 5 things to say about your fire extinguisher. Let's see, triangles. You should have 2 triangles at least. Fuses, you should have 2 of each. Amps, I think it is volts, amps. Safe start, remember dump the clutch and make sure that your gear shifter is in neutral, which is your safe start. And then think 1 ABS. And what did I do for this? Let's see. Gauges. Oh, it's been a while since I read these. Your ABS brakes. Your battery. Remember 12.5, I think it's amps, right? To 14 is your normal range for your battery. For us, you didn't have to mention anything about oil, but just tell them that the oil's full, the water's adequate, and what you don't have to say what the manufacturer specs are, but we just used to say that all my fluids and all my measurements are adequate according to the manufacturer specifications on this vehicle, okay? Normal parameters, actual readings. And then you talk about 2 of these, 2 of these, 2 of these, 2, 2, 2. So 6 times 2, right? WW, windshield washer. What about it? They're rubber. Say things about rubber. They're not frayed, dry rotted. They're intact, right? 2 lights, high beam, low beam. 2 things of your horn. You got your regular steering wheel horn and your tractor trailer horn. You got 2 blinky things, left and right, and also your 4-ways. Then you got 2 blowy things. 2 blinky things, 2 blowy things. Heating and defrost. And then you do your 2 tug, ketchup and mustard, right? Yellow and red. So tug against your tractor and your trailer. So you got the 2 colors, yellow and red, both buttons in. And don't forget to put 2 fingers on your steering wheel, go 5 miles an hour, and then tell them you don't have any excess play in the steering wheel, okay? You get your governor running. Tell them when the governor kicks in and kicks out. Let's see, 120 to 140 is the range for that. Your air, when it's down to 0, it will rise up. And the governor will cut out when it's 120 because you don't want to blow up the system. Somewhere between 120 and 140. Remember, G key, LAB. So you got your G for governor. Turn the key off so the engine turns off, but on enough that your gauges work. And don't forget to mention, maybe you don't do it, but you tell them I would chock the wheels right now. Very important. So G key, chock, LAB. Leak. You're going to press your brake. You're going to hold it till the needle on your dashboard stabilizes. Actually, tell them I'm going to, even whether you do it or not, pretend you're taking your phone out and you say, I'm going to check for a minute. Actually do it. Get your timer, let it go down a minute and say, I've let 1 minute pass. My needle has stabilized. Your needle is not doing this, or it's not going up and down. Okay, it's stabilized. And then A for alarm. Anything below 60, really 55, you should hear an auditory and a visual alarm. So you'll hear a beep and you'll see a red alarm. That's for safety, because you want to tell him that if it gets lower than 60, really your brakes are going to come on, and you don't want that to just happen while you're driving, right? So you want to be notified around 60 before it gets to 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, and back down to 0, and then you lose air pressure and your brakes lock on. B for buttons. So when your air gets down around 30 or 40, your buttons should automatically pop out, and that's when they're automatically coming on. Your alarm, visual and auditory alarm, should alarm no less than 55. So start saying that the right way. No less than 55 PSI. And then your other alarm, let's see, with air in the system, no less than 30 PSI. You can't just say a number. You have to say, what is it? 55 what? PSI. 30 what? PSI. Or with air in the system. All right. Maybe I should do this in two parts. Let's see. We talked about that. We talked about that. Okay. Lights. Let's see. Just do your walk around. Pretend like you're wiping it off, or I actually took a rag around with me. You look professional. Your headlights, you're going to check high and low. Your reflectors or tape, make sure it's all intact. When you approach your whole vehicle, your whole gross vehicle, look at the whole rig as one, and just make sure you have clearance underneath the bumper. You don't see any piles of fluids, no wires hanging, nobody's tampered with your tractor trailer. Check your taillights and the tractor and the trailer. So for this, you got to crawl underneath the trailer. You're going to look in the back bumper, okay? Put your four-ways on up front, and then when you get to the back, mention that your four-ways are adequately working. Then you have to walk up front again, put your lefts on, tell them that your lefts are working all the way down the left, including front, rear of the tractor, and rear of the trailer. Same thing with your right. Brake lights, ask for help. Somebody push their foot on the brake pedal, and then you tell them that your lights are working. Your reverse lights have to be white, and you mentioned that. I got my red is intact and my white is intact. Red is for brakes, running lights, blinkers, and a four-way, and amber up front, and red's in your rear. Coupling you may not have to do. If you do your coupling, don't forget your landing gear. You've got high and low, whether you pull the handle out or push it in. Release the handle pin. Go actually physically underneath your tractor trailer joint and look at that collar. Make sure the collar and the jaw has come around that pin, the king pin. Your lines, red to red. These are your glad hands, red to red, blue to blue. Tractor trailer lines. Let's see, electric pigtail. So make sure everything, you don't hear any hissing, pissing, and that you've actually going to be able to have air be injected into your trailer. Let's see, the kingpin. Check that your kingpin is firmly welded to the frame, that it's not, pinching off. I've seen some compromised, tweaked tractor trailers. I wouldn't trust that kingpin afterwards. I got it unstuck from the ditch. Check your whole apron on the bottom of the trailer and the top of the fifth wheel, okay? The whole connection. Make sure everything's flush. Make sure there's no spaces or gaps between your fifth wheel and your apron, okay? Your platform, skid plate, whatever you want to call it. Sliders, your mounting bolts. Then we go to ABC, okay? Like I said, you may be lucky, you may have just one or all three. Anything with tires in Florida, 100 to 105 PSI, one or two valve stems, the sidewall, tread depth, that you're checking it with a gauge, even wear. Don't forget your tread depth, no recaps in the front, which ones are serviceable, not serviceable, your bud wheels, and lug nuts all over. Okay, with A, it's going to be your front overview. This is just you're going to open up the hood. You're going to say, in my engine, I don't see any leaks. And remember all the ABCs, BBCs, and CABLs, all those things. So your bumper is level, your whole truck from top to bottom. What's on top? Your amber lights, your stacks, your roof of your cab, your glass is intact, your headlights are intact, nothing major. You don't see any leaks or wires underneath. Your lights, reflectors, headlamps, and glass is all intact. Your hood is open, even on your Unis side. That's your passenger side, because it, really everything you're going to check is on the driver's side. I think most trucks, there's only like one or two things to check on the passenger side. Unique. It's a man who's not really a man anymore, so it's the useless side. Coolant, check for leaks. Level, check your reservoirs. Hoses, clamps and fittings. Alternator and wires, you're going to talk about the belt, half to 3/4 inch play. Your water pump, talk about the belt, half to 3/4 inch play in the belt, or you might have a gear. So know whether you have a belt or a gear system, what you're talking about. I mean, if you go in there and look at the wrong one, your instructor might think you don't know what you're looking at. Oil, either check the level or tell them you're checking the level while you're pretending to check the level. Talk about the whole frame, make sure the frame's intact. Power steering, reservoir and pump, belt versus gear, check the level. Air compressor, belt versus gear, 1/2 inch. Steering box, talk about the linkage. And then if you want to look smart, we had to have the guys talk about the pitman arm, the drag link, upper and lower control arms, and the tie rod. On your overall suspension, these are your leaf springs, your shock absorbers. You might have a leaf versus coil. Usually you're going to have leaf springs. You're going to have a main leaf and then the helper springs. Just make sure that nothing's cracked and that you don't have any leaf springs crooked. Main and helper, you got bushings, hangers, your airbag versus your spring air. If you see the bags, just tell them that they're inflated, they're intact. I don't hear any hissing or pissing of air. Brakes, your chamber hose, slack adjusters. I think you don't want more, check it. I think more than 1 inch of play. Your push rod, know where that is. Talk about your boots, that there's no excessive grease, or that they have grease, but there's no excessive grease around it. You should have no oil or grease on your drums. Your pads, actually look in and tell them I can see adequate brake pads. Know the difference between a pad and a drum and a shoe. And you have to have at least 1/4 inch thickness left to be adequate braking, and no grease on anything. And your rims, tell them if it's single versus bud, and all the things you say about a tire. B goes from your driver's door all the way to the rear of the trailer. Let's see. I'm sorry. So A, you've already done the hood, okay? So B goes behind the driver's door to the rear of the tractor. I mean, starting from the rear of the tractor. Sorry, it's been a while, guys. So starting from the rear of the tractor door all the way to the end of the trailer. That's section B. All right, check your mirrors. Make sure they're adjusted for you. All the brackets are intact. Glass is intact. Clean, that you can see through it. Your door, tell them that the hinge is intact. Gaskets are there. Your steps are free of anything slippery, free of debris, no soda cans stuck in there, anything like that. Your fuel tank has the strap hangers intact. The cap is on your fuel tank. That your DEF has at least 1/8 of a tank, your DEF fluid. Hope you know what DEF fluid is for diesel. Tractor lights, what color, amber versus red, the function. Don't forget to talk about your catwalk, that it's intact. There's no oil on there, nothing slippery. Your steps are not slippery to the fifth wheel area. Your drive shaft, your U-joints, universal. Your frame, your cross members, everything's intact, looks good. Your exhaust, manifold, your turbo elbow, stack and the tip, know where all those parts are. Tandem, suspension, let's see, leaf versus coil, U-bolts, hangers, airbag, mounts, your spring bag, your shock absorbers, the torque arm, and then your tractor brake. Look at the hoses, the chamber, what I got written there? Slack adjusters, again, push rods 1 inch, play, your drums versus shoes versus pads 1/4 inch, rims, tires, bud, wheels, your lugs, your hub, axles, mud flaps are important. Make sure you tell them that they're intact. And even if they're not intact, tell them I would make sure they're intact. And if I saw that they were missing, I would fill out a DVIR, driver's report. Tractor lights, tell them that there's the red ones and which one your reverse is the white. You should have 4 red brakes, running, four-way, and blinkers. And then your reverse is white, and your reflectors. All right, and then you got C. We're almost done here. So C is your trailer, an overview. The front, just look an overview of the whole front, the bulkhead. Is it crashed in? Is it intact? Are there lights up top? Are the rivets all pretty much grossly good? I mean, you're not going to laser check them or anything, but just look at them. The floor, is the floor intact, the whole frame? Landing gear, how's the handle? Is the handle hooked up or latched up? You don't want that thing swaying in the wind, and you don't want it to hit anybody for safety. The whole sidewalls, the lights, your lines, your hoses, electric and air. No leaks, nothing pissing. Your tandem release, your pins, the slider. All right, again, suspension, whole left and right sides of your trailer, all these things we talked about. Same thing, same thing. Just reading down all the same thing. All right, you guys should be good.